And then we're going to be wrapping up our series that we started a little while ago called Unboxed. Now, we're going to be wrapping that up today. I want to tell you as we jump into that and kind of close that conversation up, next weekend we're going to be kicking off a new series. Just want to tell you a little bit about it. It's going to be an important one. We're going to talk a little bit about, as we kind of go into election season, what does it mean to be a citizen of a country and a citizen of the kingdom? How do those things work together? So come to that conversation, track it with us a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about how that all works. We will not tell you how to vote. Don't ask me who I'm voting for. Don't ask my children who they're voting for, right? None of those things. But it's going to be fun and I think very, very helpful as we kind of dive into that together. So that starts next weekend. But this series we've been in for a while called Unboxed, and this one has been all about looking at God and the reality of who God is. And we said what tends to happen is because God is unseen, we can tend to lose track of who God is a little bit, and he can get kind of smaller in our understanding. We can put him into a box. And we said often what happens when that happens is we start to feel like our life and our problems and our situations feel like they get enlarged. Now, there are very real problems that exist that can be very consuming, so don't hear me wrong. But what happens is when I begin to see God rightly, when I start to see him for who he actually is, my problems find their rightful place. Some things are a very big deal, but when I have a big God, so to say, underneath all of that, I view it differently, right? My level of peace changes, my ability to find joy and contentment changes, right? There's a lot that starts to happen when I allow God to be who he is. And so if you've missed those conversations over the last bunch of weeks, catch up online. You can go to our YouTube channel if you want, and you can find any of our messages there if you want to get caught up and kind of go back and listen to those and watch those. What we're going to do is kind of wrap up the conversation today, take one more look and perspective at who God is, and see how that all plays out. Here's been our go-to verse as we've come back over and over again. We said this: the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. We said this, right? If I see God for who he is, I kind of revere him for who he is. That's kind of the idea of the fearing the Lord. Then I'm going to have a good starting point to access wisdom, to know how to approach life. And that would be a huge goal, I think, for all of us. Right? So how do we do that? What does that look like? When I was thinking about this week and this week's conversation, I was thinking about my experience, and I think the experience that probably a lot of us have had before, that in life, we tend to experience life here on the planet. This is going to be the planet for the sake of our conversation. And we tend to experience life on the planet, and we tend to feel the reality that in this life, we tend to have what I'm going to call, for the sake of our conversation, gaps. We have gaps. We have areas of need that we're like, I don't feel like I am complete. I feel like I have desires of my heart that are unfulfilled. I need something, and I'm trying to find it. Like at different points in life, some of us, or I think all of us are going to feel this. Sometimes in life, we feel like we kind of have life by the tail, and we don't feel those gaps as much. Often, though, we're going to come back over and over again to those, and we're going to be in search of something. How do I get this gap to close in my life? How do I feel kind of complete? And sometimes what we'll do is go to other people and take other people who have kind of the same situation that we do. They have gaps too, and we'll look and we'll say, maybe if I find the right person, that person can help close the gaps for me. And sometimes we'll do that in relationships, romantic relationships. If I find the right boyfriend or girlfriend, they will complete me. We might not say it out loud. We might be embarrassed to kind of say that, but there's an assumption underneath there. If I just found the right person, all these problems would not matter that much. They'd go away. Sometimes that's in a friendship or a mentor. I remember kind of looking for mentors, people that I could model my life after, and then I would discover that they're people just like me, and it would be disillusioning. Like, what do I do now? Who do I follow now? because this person is jacked up just like I am, right? They're a messed up person just like I am. How am I going to do this? Sometimes we'll go not to people, we'll go to pursuits to find this, right? So we'll run to things like money or some kind of accomplishment, right? And we'll try to find this gap closing experience somewhere else. And over and over again, as we do this, we will find that none of this satisfies the soul. None of it completes us and gives us a sense of contentment. And even as we are in this fight to try to find the gaps closing, what will happen is we feel entitled to these things that we want in our life. And when we don't have them, we lack joy, we lack peace, and we get a little bit frozen and wonder, how do I approach life in such a way that I can have all of this and have my gaps closed, but none of it really works, right? None of it really works. And I bet you've experienced some version of that. I've experienced a lot of this and feel it very, very personally. I want to talk about why this is, why this same experience plays out over and over again. And if you're a follower of Jesus or not, why you're going to experience this unless some of this conversation clicks in a new level. And then if you're anything like me, you'll probably still mess it up in some ways, right? But let's have a conversation about it. Why do we do this? What are we really looking for? Why do we feel like we have to get life perfect? And if I can get it all perfect, then I can have my life fulfilled as long as nobody moves, right? If I can get it all kind of arranged and just stay still, then I'll be okay. Here's what's going on. I'm going to read this passage here in Acts 17 that is very eye-opening. Here's what Paul, the Apostle Paul, arguing, kind of debating, dialoguing with a group of philosophers. Here's what he said. He said, "The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by human hands. He's not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives life. He gives everyone life and breath and everything else." Paul is starting the conversation with this reality that there's a God who exists, who is outside of creation, and he's making something very clear. This God doesn't need anything. Unlike you and I, there's a being out here that is not needy in this. He has no gaps, so to say. There's no holes that he's trying to fill. He's not looking back at humanity and saying, "Hey, I made you guys because I was feeling lonely. I was bored. I needed some stuff to do. You have to fill this for me." The reason God made people is this. It's like two parents that are super healthy, right? And married people who are healthy and who are looking and saying, "Hey, we love each other. We have a solid situation where we're trying to extend that love to other people. Let's have children." Right? And a bunch of you have made that decision, who are trying to make that decision. You're like, "Hey, we have people that we want to love. We have more love to give. Let's invite more people into the family." That's the heart of God. We all know this. It would be an unhealthy thing to think, "Hey, you know what would make my problems go away? My life's kind of it's challenging and kind of messed up right now. You know what I think would really help and make my life simple? Let's have a baby." Right? That solves all kinds of stuff, right? If that was a solution for you, maybe rethink that a little bit, right? Babies, God looks and says, "Hey, I'm going to create, not because I need you. I don't need you." And at first, we want to be needed, so that feels almost offensive. Wait a minute, God doesn't need me? God does not need us. That's a critically important piece that I want to make sure we grab hold of. He doesn't need us. He doesn't need us. God is not incomplete. The Trinity was before the foundation of the world, was operating in contentment with itself. God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, it's a whole other conversation how that works. But right, God existed and wasn't lonely or needy or bored. God had love to give, so he created. And here's the wonderful thing I want us to get a hold of. While he doesn't need us, he does want us, right? He does want us. He wants a relationship with us. He would prove that by what he did on the cross, and Jesus would be the way that we could, of course, access God. And here's the reality, folks. The reality is the only being, the only entity, the only pursuit, the only one who can handle the weight of our need is God. Here's why. God completely understands my situation. He understands my soul. He knows what I'm wired to do and become and give myself to. He knows what makes me tick. He never runs out of gas. He's not like a person who is going to run into weakness and have his own needs. See, you and I are made to take that need that we have, that we run to money for, or we run to accomplishment for, or we run other relationships for, and we're made to bring that to God. We need you. We worship you. We celebrate you. We need you. And I have to bring all of that to God. It's the only place I'm going to go and not be disillusioned by the brokenness or the vanity of that pursuit. God is a God who is independent in himself, which is why he can handle all of my needs. And not only mine, but the needs of the whole world. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Now, let's keep advancing it. I want us to see this because as we continue to understand God more, right, kind of more and more of the picture of who he is, we need to understand kind of these baseline thoughts. If we don't get these, then we're going to approach life with very flawed assumptions. Here's what Job says in 41:11. He says, "Who has a claim against me that I must pay? Everything under heaven belongs to me." Wow. God says something very interesting here. He looks and says, who under heaven do I owe anything to? This is a little wild. Because what we're going to get a hold of here is not only does God not need us, he also, he doesn't owe us anything. This is a tough one, guys. Because in 2024, it kind of feels like we're entitled to some level of ease and some level of comfort. And if life's not that easy or not that comfortable, pretty quickly, I mean, me too. I'm like, God, why? Right? My Wi-Fi went out. Right? I mean, it's kind of that bad, right? If I get a flat tire, I'm like going to lose my mind. My whole day is interrupted. I mean, I'm inconvenienced, right? I mean, you all experience it. I do too. And the reality is God's not looking at you and me and saying, hey, I saw that you tried to do something kind for someone. You love somebody. And man, since you did that kind thing, you tried to close a gap in somebody's life. I owe you now. I mean, now I'm indebted to you to do what you want to have happen in your life. Now, here's the beautiful thing. While God does not owe me, it's not like when I go to work and then an employer owes me a paycheck. Here's what does happen, though. God, out of his own being, out of who he is, while he doesn't owe us anything, he freely pours out his kindness to you and me. The longer I live, the more I realize that I barely see or understand how much kindness God is pouring out in my life on a daily, moment-by-moment basis. I'm only scratching the surface. The scriptures are going to say things like this, that he causes the rain to fall on the righteous and the wicked. Right? That he shows kindness to kind of the good and the bad. That the fact that the sun came up this morning, there's air to breathe, is an evidence of God's kindness. He doesn't owe us any of that. He owes us nothing. In fact, if he was just to be righteous, if he was to be just in this situation, God would look at us and say, what you've earned for yourself in your violent attempts to fulfill your own needs is separation from me. Just the fact that he has not chosen to do that is an act of his kindness. He doesn't need me, but he wants me. He wants relationship. He doesn't owe me anything, but he has chosen to give me his kindness, and those kindnesses are everywhere. I barely even recognize them because of, right, half the time, more than that maybe, I'm in this crazy, frenzied pursuit of trying to get my gaps closed through other stuff that's going on in my life. To get pain to not show up and have a little bit of comfort, I got to scroll. I got to make sure that I don't feel any discomfort at any moment. And meanwhile, kindness is being poured out. Lavish grace, undeserved favor into my life in ways that are far beyond all I could ask, think, or imagine. He goes on. It says, for every animal of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. He says, I know every bird in the mountains and the insects in the fields are mine. If I were hungry, I wouldn't tell you, for the world is mine and all that is in it. God is pointing to the reality that everything that he has created is his. Not only does he not owe us, he owns all. He owns everything. He is the creator and the designer and the owner of all things. This is something that's really hard for us to get our heads around, me too. And I experience it on a regular basis. I've got 3 teenagers, 1 preteen. It's a fun season of my life. I love it. Super fun, seriously. It actually really is. I know many of you are laughing and praying for me right now, but it's actually really fun. I love it. But a lot of times we have conversations like this. When Uriah, my oldest son, when he moves out and he's not in his room anymore, can I have that room? Right? Can I have his room? Who's going to have that room? Who's going to have his room? And I have to look and say things like this. First of all, that's not his room, that's my room. That he gets to stay in, and I love that, right? I love that he gets to stay there, and out of my lavish kindness, I give him a bed, right? And provide for it. It's wonderful. And maybe you can stay in the room that I provided for him someday in the future that will not be yours, but mine, right? And right, we have fun little conversations like this, tease a little bit. And then, but honestly, right, we're joking, but the reality is those rooms aren't mine either. They're not really, right? My name's on the mortgage and my address, right? That's fine. But the reality is that I don't own anything. The cars I drive and the house that I live in and the clothes that I wear, and it's all the Lord's. He's the one that created it all, and he made it all, and he's the one who does all that. What he would look at and say, hey, I own all that. I know you think you do, and you get confused sometimes. What I have done for you, and I love doing this, is I'm allowing you to manage it. I'm allowing you to manage it. You are a steward. You're somebody that manages on my behalf. You don't own it. Guys, if I want to have a more sane, realistic view of life and reality, I got to get a hold of this truth. I don't own it. It's not mine. Well, it's my house, and these are my rights, and it's mine, and I have the... Whoa. What? Are we reading? And guys, listen, I get there too. I just want to make sure we understand the fear of the Lord. It's his. It's his stuff, and he has entrusted it to me to manage, not to own. I don't just get to do whatever I want with it without giving an account to him. Why? Because he owns it. These realities start to set me up into a place where I can see life differently. This stuff that I run to find the filling of my gaps is not the place for gap filling. Often these are gifts of God's kindness that I get to enjoy. They're things that I get to manage for his glory. They're places that I can look at God and offer worship back to him. Not only can I bring all of my need to him, I get to bring all of my worship to him through all that he has given. Not just on Sunday morning with a few songs, but in the way that I approach my accomplishments and the way I manage my money and the way that I interact relationally, all become opportunities to be a steward of what he has gifted to me, to receive his kindnesses faithfully. See how it's night and day different. If this is just, I only live once, and so I better get mine. Whose? Who are we talking about right now? How long do you think that's going to last? You get to live maybe 80 or 90 years, if you're lucky. And then you'll spend eternity, infinite time, outside of time with him. You don't only live once. You live here once. You live forever with God. That's reality. Guys, and I'm telling you this way, I got to tell myself this because I get sucked into the same trap. What if I don't get to do everything I want to do? What if all my dreams and my bucket list doesn't happen? What if I'm not as happy as all the other people are happy? Look how happy they are on social media. Look, they're happy. They're smiling and they're at a beach. What if I don't get to go to a beach and smile? No, right? All is lost. The pressure to get mine out of this life distorts what this life's actually about. This life isn't so much for that. Hear me, it's fine to go on vacation. It's fine to take a rest. It's fine to enjoy a kindness. Those are great. While we do this, while we interact with a God who wants us and loves us and is pouring his kindness as we manage what he has given us. Why? Because we're only going to be here for a little while, and then forever we're going to be with him. See how the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If I don't know that, if I don't recognize him, if I make him go away in my mind, then all of a sudden this is all I got. Guys, and if this is all we got, that's sad. That's a sadness. Because I can't keep the things I have. And I can't make time last forever here on earth. And I can't stop people who are imperfect from hurting me. And I can't guarantee that no sickness will happen. I can't make this world sin-free and pain-free. And if I try, if my goal is to make heaven on earth and to have all that go away, I just want you to understand that that is a recipe for absolute misery. If you want to live a miserable and anxious life, try to make heaven on earth. Is it possible that our own problem sometimes, not always, sometimes is self-created because I'm missing the unboxed God and the reality of the reality of what this life is actually like and what it's supposed to be about? To think that contentment comes from here instead of from here. To think that my needs and my gaps get closed here from circumstances and nobody move and everything has to be perfect. And if it's not, then I'm miserable. Instead of finding an eternal joy and contentment that shows up a little bit no matter what happens here. Not to say that we we run out and we always are loaded with joy and overflowing, we're certainly going to suffer like everybody does. But if I view this rightly, then my life becomes an act of worship. Like it says in Revelation, what we're going to sound like this: you are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive honor and glory and power. For you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being. God, my life is not about me, it's about you. And the things that you've put in my life, I will steward and manage for your glory as an act of worship, not so I can get mine. And along the way, I'll enjoy little gifts of your kindness here and there in the process. But I shift the focus. It's about him and making him look good in the days and the time that I have here, not about some desperate attempt to hoard glory and resources and relationships to take care of my neediness. It's a game-changing perspective shift. I have a friend who, I haven't seen him for a long time. We got to travel together and do some ministry together years ago. And he did tours for years in Israel, where he would tour the life of Jesus in the biblical lands, and he's a bit of a scholar. And he was a pastor in Florida for a long time, retired from that, and he moved to North Carolina. So he has a home in North Carolina, and he still travels to Israel to do some of that. And he happened to be in Israel when the bombings started here not too long ago. And he put out this social media post about his perspective on what was happening as his hometown was destroyed, and he is literally in a bomb shelter. So this is a perspective from a guy who's kind of lost everything. Has been a follower of Jesus for a long, long time. Could demand God, you right, all that. And here's his perspective. I want you to hear it. Words from a bomb shelter. What to do when your life stops. The other night, Iran sent ballistic missiles to Israel. It wasn't the first time. As I sat with friends, we were eating when the sirens sent us to shelters. We were talking. It says the room wasn't filled with despair because all of these dear ones believe that God is at work. As we were talking, it occurred to me that I have so many friends back in North Carolina right now that are passing the night in powerless darkness, waiting for the electricity to come back on. Like my wife and I, they have lost homes and access to their possessions. Their life has seemed to stop. We've been here before, but if you haven't, here are a few words I hope will help you, because they've helped me. You may not believe it, but there are things that you can do when life stops. This is first, I sincerely recommend that you join me in recounting the many blessings God poured into your life. We're quick to see what we've lost, but not what we have. Honestly, I may have lost a house I love, probably a nice car and a fantastic truck. Maybe they'll be salvageable, maybe not. For now, life stopped. I can't go back and I can't live normally, but I can worship. I can celebrate faithful friends and loved ones who are praying and working to help people back home. I can rejoice as my home church feeds hungry people. I can pray for my pastor who I know is exhausted. The truth is, God has blessed me with wonderful people all over my life, and some are showing up right now. Second, I can remember that while life truly is uncertain, God is not haphazard. He has a plan, and we are part of it. He's working here in Jerusalem, and he's working in Bat Cave, North Carolina, my little village that has lost her roads, homes, and some wonderful neighbors. Third, from a shelter, I can take time to reflect on goals that are not dependent on today's troubles. Like, I'm going to eat as healthy as I can, or I'm going to exercise, even if I can't leave this room for a time. Fourth, I can chart how many people I need to begin to reach out and touch. I've drifted too long from some of them. Life is not about accomplishments, and the problem is that seeking to accomplish, we can easily put relationships on autopilot. From a shelter, I can decide to make changes. Fifth, tragedies unexpectedly blast our lives. People in North Carolina are still in shock from the storm. It's hard. They're in survival mode. Soon that will begin to fade. With each little restoration, we need to realize how many luxuries we have. Today's hot water is next week's cell phone service. One by one, life will come back slowly. There's more, but I can offer one more. Sixth, when life stops, we can allow ourselves some time to consider our struggles, but then we need to stop. We need to turn off the negative valve and turn on the positive one in a deliberate move. We need to remember that setbacks are not ends. They're a time to rethink, to retrench, to renew. He finishes with this. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's bad. As I listen to my friend talk about what life is like from this perspective, I'm blown away. Blown away. This is a man operating out of fear of the Lord. I've never had my house wiped out, and I've never been in a bomb shelter. At least not while one was being actively bombed. Guys, what I know, even as I look around the room, I know many of us, many of you, are in the middle of storms, difficulties, uncertainties, tragedies. And you wonder, is there a God in any of this? Guys, I don't know how to explain what happens here on earth. All I can do is hear from people like my friend. And what I hear in his response is something I want in my life. Is he's saying, well, it's all stripped away. Can I look around and find the little kindnesses? Find the little joys, the little privileges, the realities. There's a God who wants me and loves me and continues to show kindness to me, even though it all feels dark. When the desperate attempt goes away, what's left is a God who's eternal, who knows and sees it all, who will never leave or forsake, who will never change, who has all the power to sustain us through unbelievable difficulty. And that God is bringing all that to bear for you, for me. Guys, he is worthy. He's worthy of our time and our attention and our trust. And today he's inviting us, wherever we are, to move towards him as he has moved towards us. As the band comes out, would you pray with me? We'll ask God to lead us into this time together. Father, you are the only one who never gets tired. Lord, you never run out of patience and kindness and compassion and energy to work with me, to deal with all of our neediness and all of the difficulties. Lord, you're the only one that can listen forever. You can absorb all of our burdens. You can handle all of our questions and our anxieties, our doubts, our fears, even our anger. Lord, you are a God who is good and kind, long-suffering. Even in your holiness and uniqueness, God, you don't need us, but you long to have us. You want us. You want relationship with us. So much you paid for it in blood. God, would you help us to see your heart, to see your love, and to see how you're showing up right in the middle of our storm. Meet us here, Lord, even now.